morning. Today we have Curious George Gets a Medal by Margret and H.A. Rays. Margret and H.A. Rays. This is George. He lived with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. George was alone this morning, looking at a picture book when the doorbell rang. It was the mailman. "Here is a letter for you," he said. "Put it on your friend's desk. He'll read it to you when he comes home." George was curious. It was not often that somebody wrote him. Too bad he could not read the letter. But maybe he could write one himself. In the top drawer of the desk there was paper and ink and a fountain pen. George sat down on the floor and began to write, but the pen was dry. It needed ink. George would have to fill it. He got a funnel from the kitchen and started pouring ink. But instead of going into the pen, the ink spilled all over and made a big blue puddle on the floor. It was an awful mess. Quickly, George got the blotter from the desk, but that was no help. The puddle grew bigger all the time. George had to think of something else. "Why, soap and water! That's what you clean up with." From the kitchen shelf he got a big box of soap powder and poured all the powder over the ink. Then he pulled the garden hose through the window, opened the tap, and sprayed water on the powder. Uh-oh. Bubbles began to form, and then some lather, and more lather, and more lather, and more lather. In no time, the whole room was full of lather, so full indeed that George had to escape in a hurry. Well, that's a lot of lather. When he was safely out of the house, he first turned off the tap. But what next? How could he get rid of all the lather before his friend came home? George sat down in the grass and thought for a long time. Finally, he had an idea. He would get the big shovel and shovel the lather out of the window. But where was the lather? While George had been outside thinking, it had all turned into water. Now the room looked like a lake and the furniture like islands in it. The shovel was no use. A pump was what George needed. To get the water out, and he knew just where to find one. He had seen a portable pump at the farm down the road. The farmer was away working in the fields. Nobody noticed George when he got the pump out of the shed. It was heavy. He would need help to pull it all the way back to the house. Maybe he could tie the goat to the pump and make her pull it. But just as George was about to slip the loop over the goat's head, he was hurled through the air and landed near a pen full of pigs. The biggest pig was standing near the gate. What if George opened the gate and just enough to let him out? A big pig could easily pull a small pump. Carefully, George lifted the latch, and before he knew it, all the pigs had burst out of the pen, grunting and squealing and trying to get away as fast as they could. George was delighted. He had never seen anything like it. For the moment all his troubles were forgotten. But now the pigs were all gone, and not a single one left to help him with the pump.